welcome to another episode of Knifemaking Downunder podcast. We've got a couple of special guests with us today. One of our own local talents in the knife making industry, Keith Fludder, and we also have an international guest, and we've got Jim Coop from Sharp by Coop. So should be some good listening today for everyone. Need to welcome back on board Corin and Mert. So how are you guys going?
Oh, exhausted. We just had the Sydney Knife Show this weekend. It was great, and it was great to talk to people and talk to other makers. And thanks to everyone who stopped at my table. But anytime you prepare for a knife show, it's just exhausting. So how was your weekend, Kim?
Yeah, the weekend was good. Really enjoyed it. I like going to knife shows. Outside of the component of knife shows of actually selling knives, I just like going to knife shows because, as we touched on just before in our own little conversation, I can talk. So I like to go and catch up with everyone that I haven't seen between shows. It's all good. And what about you, Corin?
Yeah, thanks, Kev. I'm just recovering, actually. Yeah, the knife show was huge. I'm not going to pretend like I did a lot. I got a great team there that loaded the truck and set it up and then packed up the truck while I entertained Brian from Paragon and Jim Cooper. And then during the show, I basically just used paper wheels and did sharpening demonstrations and walked around talking to people. So it was pretty relaxed for me. On the Monday after the show, I went out with Brian from Paragon. We did some business and had a look at the beaches, Bondi and so forth. And then yesterday we went canyoning up in the Blue Mountains, experienced some cold water and Blue Mountain scenery for Jim Cooper and Brian from Paragon, and Keith Fludder as well. So, and of course Susan, lovely Susan, Jim Cooper's wife, and Trevor, his son. So today I spent the whole day fixing up my die filer to use saw blades, which I kind of sort of have a plan to do, and I got a prototype working. So that was pretty good. That was my week in a nutshell. My shed looks like a bomb hit it, but that's okay.
I don't think it's ever looked like it hasn't had a bomb hit it, has it?
Oh, it looks like if a bomb hit it is kind of a bit drastic, because that sort of implies there's stuff strewn everywhere, where normally it's more packed like a box of matches or something like that, where it's there's so much stuff you can't get anything else in there. And but at the moment it's probably a mixture of both. I've got too much stuff and it's a bit of a mess. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah. Keith.
Yes, mate.
How was your weekend, mate?
Mate, as you guys have indicated, the show is just huge, and you just talk non-stop for, the 8 hours a day, and, I don't think I had lunch on either day because it was just full on, go all the time. Monday, after the show, it was just like, Jim Cooper said to me, well, what's the plan? Have we got something planned today? And it was like, mate, let's just play it by ear, and maybe we could just have a bit of a relaxing time, which we did. And then basically Jim and his son Trevor and I went for a walk, and which was good. I was going to take them for a walk down through, my bushland at the back of my property, and then my dog decided that it would escape outside of the fence. So we spent probably, I don't know, what was it, Jim? 30 to 45 minutes trying to get my dog out of the bush and back up to the house. So after that, we were pretty much flogged, mate, and the rest of the afternoon was just like, let's just sit down, and we really look forward to a relaxing, nice cold beer at the end of that day. So that was my Monday, mate.
Yeah, fantastic.
Keith, that was the best part of my day.
Chasing the dog through the bush, or the beer. Righto. So, as we all know, the Sydney show is Australia's biggest knife show, and it's something that's been steadily growing over the last few years with the input of all the members of the Knife Art Association. And I think this year in particular, it was good to see, it was strange for me. My feeling of the show was quite strange that it seemed intensely busy for a period of the day Saturday and then quite steady. But overall, it was strange. It felt like the show wasn't as busy, but then the numbers came through from Andrew Smith saying that we actually had an increase in numbers through the door. So I found that quite interesting, that there was an increase in numbers, yet I don't know whether I'm just getting used to the larger show scene or not, but it actually felt quite relaxed. Anyone else find that?
I sort of got the same feeling as you've just described. It was like Saturday was like, as soon as the doors open, like with every show, it's like bang and everyone's there. And then, around about the 2 o'clock mark, it sort of seemed to sort of die down a little bit. And I was thinking to myself, oh, maybe, this is not such a good, a good feeling, or, it seemed like we'd sort of plateaued a little bit. And, Sunday rolled around and it was really, really constant. So, for mine, having seen the total numbers and seeing that, we'd gained another 10% through the doors was a real surprise. And hopefully, and I'm sure that it will, keep growing. So, yeah, it was a great show.
Keith, what's behind the barking, man? Is that your dog is angry at you because you found him?
No, sorry about the barking. Today we're recording in #Bunnings Picton in my workshop. So I dare say that's one of my dogs, or more likely someone's dog on the bike track out the back. So never mind. So Mert, how'd you go sales wise?
Oh, sales wise, it was good, man. I was happy. And only sad part was there was a knife that I really wanted to give it to Jim to take a picture of it. It was a Feather Damascus with the Honduras rosewood bird hand, muskox handle. I was thinking, I'll just get a picture of it later on, because it was a more expensive side compared to my other work. And I'm thinking, I'll be fine. It'll be there in a few hours. It was the second knife I sold in the day. I think it was sold in the first half an hour. That was the only bad part. Other than that, it was a good show. I sold many knives. I got to see many people, and many people actually who listen to us from the podcast were there and saying how much they enjoyed the podcast. It was interesting because people were coming and they're talking to me. I'm thinking, I have a really bad memory. I'm thinking, I know this person, but I don't remember where. And I'm giving that look, and they're saying all of a sudden, no, you don't know me. I've just listened to your podcast.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to get to know people.
So don't forget, on the subject of that, don't forget to for everyone listening, get onto our social media, onto our Facebook page and onto our Instagram, where you can communicate with us, ask us questions, let us know what you want us to answer. And we can interact with you in those social media forums. You've got some questions, I believe, there, Kev, for Jim.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions for Jim. First of all, I just from my point of view, I guess for you guys as well, Jim, as everyone knows, is one of, if not the best, knife photographer in the world, and that's according to general viewing, not just my own perspective here. But I just wanted to ask Jim what you actually thought of the Sydney show.
Hey, Kevin, thank you for asking me. I want to just add a little bit of that too, because there may be some viewers and listeners that don't know who I am. Jim Cooper, Sharp by Coop Photography. I'm about 15 years doing this professional photography thing, and I have a very popular Instagram. It's one word, Sharp by Coop, and COOP is the last thing. And so I'm very experienced in doing this. I love my work. And so if the people aren't already aware of what I do, take a look-see right now or right afterwards and see what I do. In a nutshell, the Sydney show was impressive in every regard. I've been to many, many shows. I've been hired by many makers to at shows as I gave my services here to the makers that were allowed. But I tell you, I saw crowds there that were so impressive all day on Saturday. It was crowded. And you guys talk about the show dwindling down. All shows dwindle down. Of course, there's a rush that happens in the morning. But I saw numbers there. I saw crowded aisles and tables and excitement the whole time. I was very impressed, and it was good all around. So you need to pat yourself on the back. You got a wonderful knife-loving community, great knife-making community here in Australia, and it was a privilege that I was asked, and I was taken by surprise at how the excitement and the quality that's going on.
Yeah, that's excellent, because we were probably as equally surprised that you would have wanted to come out here. Being serious, we were pretty excited when you said yes, and it generated a fair amount of momentum for our show based on that.
Terrific.
And to get you all out, like to get you and your family out, I think that just actually added to that whole experience, because those of us that have been fortunate enough to get over to Blade Show and get around to where you are, that's your team. So your wife and your son and yourself are the Sharp Bite Coop team. So we needed to get the whole lot of you out, which was pretty cool.
Well, yeah. Your listeners don't understand that I was approached by Knife Art Association Sydney Knife Show to come and help work the show and do what I can do for the makers. And I got back to him. I said, I really, really want to, but I can't go back to my wife after a week in Australia and say, "Oh, sweetie, Susan, it was so good. You should have been there." And then if the two of us, and she helps me, she's my business partner, if we both came back and said, "Oh, Trevor, my son, he's 16, he's a great helper. You should have been there." So we said, if I'm going to go, I've got to make it happen somehow, all three of us. And we did. And the knife making community has stood behind and said, let's, whatever it takes, let's make this happen. So we've come to an agreement there, and we really did. And while I'm speaking, let me just talk a little bit, just briefly. When I saw the show and I saw the quality of the show and such, it was in between moments, because every other knife maker finally shows up on table and they're talking socially to everybody. That's the period of time that I have to go to work. And although I'm renowned in the knife world, and my work is celebrity status. I'm not a celebrity. The amount of time I get to chat with people is minimized, because when I have a busy show and I have a lot of great work, guess who has to not talk to you and just get right down to work? That's me. So I literally had a big curtain between me and the knife-making community, and I would step out every once in a while, and my wife would step in and say, "That's enough," and shush people away. But that's the dilemma of doing photography at a show. I'm literally working and trying to provide the best service I can for those makers that have come forward and said, I would like my work photographed by you.
Yeah, I think everyone that actually has a table at these shows can understand that, because we're all in that same position where, you've got some people that might come up to you to talk about, you're a maker and they like your work, they want to get some tips, and then you've got 7 people standing behind them.
Hello.
Wanting to look at your knives and potentially buy something, and you've got to put that sort of gap in between, being polite, being nice, and helping someone out, and actually doing the job, which is what we all need to do, and actually sell our product. So, that's good. So I guess one of my other questions for you, which has almost been answered by what you've said already, was regarding the uptake of your service by the Aussie makers. So from what you've said, you were just flat out, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I was plenty busy. The work came in, and I know you're interested in how was the quality of the work. What did you see? Again, I used the word impressive before. No one let me down. This was or let anybody down. Every knife maker that brought me stuff, I studied it. I have to show the best of it, but there's no show and no makers in America that I can that you need to apologize for. It's everybody here is paying attention. Fit and finish, design, quality, ergonomics, mechanics. Everything was impressive. So the knife making community in Australia is really not just creating waves, creating a tsunami that's going to resound across the Pacific and everywhere to the knife making world.
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. Now, sort of, I guess, either in relation to or stepping aside from the show and having you and your family come out, what's been like the highlight of the visit for you all?
Oh boy! Without question, I'm chuckling now because my legs are just coming back after a full afternoon with Corin as our tour guide. You got to remember he was a scouting instructor for years and a trailblazer, and he took us 45 minutes down the deepest lumber paths to a little-known state park forest area, and we did a hike in what's called deep pass, and they had these slot canyons, and it was so foreign, and we had to struggle around, my wife and my son and everybody, but we chuckled, we fell in the water, we got dirty as you could be. It couldn't have been more fun. I think I've never had a more exhilarating hike. Certainly not in Australia, and maybe not anywhere. It was so valuable to enjoy the Australian wildlife and community. It was inescapable. I'm so pleased I came here. If I only shot one knife and came away with that hike, I would have said the whole trip was worth it.
That's fantastic, because as you know, I popped up right at the very end of the show there. I actually made sure I came back and said goodbye to you all, and I had a quick question about what you were getting up to. And you said, "Oh, we're going to, like these blue mountains."
Mm-hmm.
And I automatically knew what you were in store for.
Yeah.
So I walked away having a little giggle to myself that I knew you were going to be walking down that pass and going through those canyons with Corin, and I'm envious of you actually, because he hasn't taken me there yet. Hint, hint. Yeah. So. No, that's fantastic. Like I said, for all the places around the world that we've been, the landscapes are just completely different. And for every part of another country that I'm impressed with, I come back and then I'm still equally impressed and humbled by what's around us in Australia. It's pretty fantastic. Really? What wildlife did you see, Jim? Did you see anything in particular?
We saw a little bit of wildlife while we were out there. A couple of kangaroos running away from us, and birds and such. However, we spent all of today at the Symbio Nature Park and saw everything right up close. I was petting kangaroos and
excellent,
and others. It was terrific. So I've been immersed with wildlife and stuff. It was terrific. Really, thank you so much.
Yeah. One of the other questions I jotted down, which again I don't think it even really needs you to answer, is if the opportunity came up, would you come out again for the show? And I think from what you've just said in the last couple of questions, or answering the last questions, I'd probably hazard a guess that you'd be out here in a flash.
I'm going to run and not walk to answer those emails and phone calls. Believe me, I'm looking forward to doing it again. I would be privileged to work at the Sydney Knife Show again. Terrific.
Fantastic.
I cannot wait. As I'm talking to you, I've shot a lot of makers' work, and I cannot wait to get back to start editing, start doing the actual work, so that the viewers will see what I do and what the Australian makers have done. And as we speak, nothing's been edited, but this podcast will go on for months and months and years. So those of you who might be tuning in a little later, the website that I carry all my images, knifegallery.com, will have a full show gallery dedicated to the Sydney Knife Show in 2019. You'll find that easily. So.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So the last thing, I guess, in terms of the formal side of questioning for you, Jim, if you could give a small tip or two for any aspiring photographers that might want to particularly get into things like knife photography or product photography, what small tips could you give them with regard to that?
Oh, practice. There you go. Corin just said it.
I hear Corin in the background. Yeah.
Just look at your work, study your work. First off, cell phones are perfectly okay. I use a Canon DSLR. The equipment I use a EOS 6D Mark II, and I use strobes, and I use a diffuser. I've used some pretty specialized equipment. I have a bunch of mirrors that push stuff back in, and that's professional quality work, and I'm glad you enjoy that. But what a good new knife maker needs to do is simply get their work out there. But I say simply doesn't mean mediocre. A lot of times I see makers and people publishing work that is visibly deficient, and there's shadows on blades, and it's not enhancing your work. I said this at a little seminar we offered at Saturday evening at the show. Most custom knife makers are offering work that no one needs it. No one needs a custom knife. They have to want it. So you have to create desire. And if you show up and you show mediocre pictures without studying your images and taking many and choosing the right one, it does yourself a disservice. So my first tip is simply open up your eyes, practice, take time, and you knife makers out there, you all know your first knife. You all know the grind lines are incorrect and this and that. So you can't wait for your second knife to improve upon that. So keep taking more and more pictures and images. Look them closely. Do I got enough light here? You can do it. The Instagram and other places are filled with non-professional images that look superb. And so you want to look at some of those and say, what did they do? Why is their work so clear and good? And understand that. And that's about it. Just keep practicing.
Yeah, and in the digital age, there's no excuse not to do that either.
Zero.
Because you're not having to process films and whatnot. So you can, the delete button on a image is good. Or like you said, keep it and reference it later and see what you've done better. Just on what you said, the little bonus we got at the knife show in having you speak to the makers and other guys there, that was absolutely superb. Picked up a couple of nice little things out of that myself. A good little advertisement for people if you're interested in getting a table at a show. It's not just about the knife making. It's not just about the knife selling. It's about that opportunity to network. And I think everyone that was there at that later stage of the day would have been sort of pinching themselves to, they're sitting in front of one of the best photographers in the world, and it hasn't cost them additional money as such,
Absolutely, Kevin. I can't thank Jim enough for putting that seminar on. For those that took advantage of it, read their emails and saw that it was on for the exhibitors, I'm sure the room was full, and it was an excellent learning experience for all of us just to see how simple it isn't. Taking a great photograph. That's what I took out of it. My question for you, Jim, is do you simply offer a single picture as your service? Is that what you're providing?
That's one of the aspects that I provide, and by all means, that's paramount. That's the start of it. But it doesn't doesn't end there, as well. That's a nice loaded question. Thank you. But first and foremost, though, you do have to take an attractive photo. So that comes with the good lighting. That comes with I mentioned at the seminar, I have literally 14,000 individual images of knives in my archive from 2003 and upward. So it's taken quite a few times to get it right. But that said, after we've gotten the technical aspects down and we've got a good image, my process starts at home. I edit these images. Those who are familiar with my work, I create multiple images of the same knife on one rectangle, and it's a fantasy picture photo, but it looks plausible. It's fantasy because we see the folding knife open, we see the folding knife closed, we see other side, we see some file work, and it's all in one image as if it was 4 knives looking at you, and that's a fantasy photo, but we make it look plausible. That single image needs to be seen by many. And so the venue that I use is not only I'm going to hand the maker back a portfolio print that they can put in their notebook, they can put on their iPad, they can put on a scrolling display, they can put it on a website. But I'm going to put it on my website, which is, I'm going to put it on my Instagram and Facebook, both are which are attended to by my Instagram has over 100,000 followers. My Facebook has got every post I put on Instagram goes on Facebook as well. And lastly, it'll always be on my website in some form, that knifegallery.com website, is so they can look at it and look at other works and compare them in detail. But the largest thing, the thing that puts a smile on most makers' for them is to find that it made it into print. We're all, as much as the digital age attracts us, and Instagram and Facebook and our websites, it's all very temporary. There's something very permanent about print. It comes out, there it is. So the Knives Annual, all the USA knife magazines, which is Knives Illustrated, Blade Magazine, and then I send out to European magazines. I have 3 European magazines, and 4, including Italy. Now I've included Knife Magazine here in Australia as editor who'll be able to access all my high resolution files. So you never know what magazine might look at something attractive and say that tells a story. I want to know more about that. And I make these images available to these editors. I make the information sheets that they provided me about the knife available to them, and the stuff that I have editors tell me my method of sharing the high-res folders and information is the best of all the photographers they've worked with. It's the easiest for them to extrapolate and use. So that's that's pumping myself up. But I've made it easy for them to make sure that they access the makers that are making really good work.
Yeah.
And Keith, I'm sitting here with you as well. Keith, what's your take on knife photography? Do you ever get your knives pictured?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Corin. Yeah, absolutely. I think I got my first professional photo done at Blade Show in 2010. And every other knife show that I've ever been to, including the Sydney Knife Show. So, I've been trying to keep Jim here as busy as I can anyway. So, yeah, look, I think that it's really, really important, to get that professional photo. And, as Jim has just said, and I'll just go backwards here a little bit. Another knife maker, I have my portfolio, if you like, or my photo album, and I was showing him, some professional shots. And he said, "Wow, they're absolutely fantastic photos. How much?" And I told him the price, and he went, "Oh, that much? That's really expensive." And I said, "Oh no, wait a minute. It's not really expensive at all." I said, because these photos, some of them here have turned up in Blade Magazine. The Knife Annual that comes out, even to some French publications. I said, "Mate, you can't get that amount of exposure for that particular price. So is it really worthwhile getting a professional photo done? Bloody oath it is.
So, Keith, while you're having a chat with us, obviously with that, the return, I saw the opportunity for getting some photos done by Coop as pretty much as an investment rather than an expense, because as you said, you're getting, potentially getting worldwide exposure. Well, you're getting that exposure, and then you're potentially getting into print as well. Have you got cases where people have directly contacted you regarding a picture, by Coop or others, where they've wanted that knife or it's gained you momentum in your sales?
Oh, definitely. Jim took a photo of a Persian style dagger that I made, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And since that time, I think I've sold about 6 of that particular style of knife. I had to actually bring one of those styled knives, of which Jim actually took a photo this past weekend, to a good collector here in Australia. He waited 3 years for that knife, and I actually have 2 more orders for that same style of knife. So out of that one inquiry, out of that first publication of that particular style of knife, I think I've, up to date now, there's been about 9 of that particular style of knife. So if you do the maths, hey, it's well worth
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Now, just for the benefit of the people listening, mate, what's your Instagram account that people can go and look at?
Keith F Knives on Instagram, and it's the same on Facebook. Or you can,
and you got a website?
Yeah, keithfludderknives.com, or you can contact me on keithfludderknives.com. keithfludderknives@gmail.com. Then that's me. I'd give you my phone number,
awesome.
but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, those of us that need it have got it, mate. Don't you worry.
Yeah, great, mate. That's fantastic.
You kind of actually answered most of the questions that I had, to get you in that formal sense. What about Mert or Corin? Do you have anything you want to add to Keith's point of view there?
Look, if I can make one knife a year and get published 4 times just through one picture, it's fair income work. So there you go, Mert.
Yeah, I agree. Took a picture of my knife last Blade show, and then next thing I knew was when Blade magazine was doing a chef's knife article, all of a sudden they contacted me, and I submitted the picture that Coop took. So I think that's the best investment you can do.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic.
And also, I have a question for Jim.
I'm here.
Jim, did you have any funny stories about taking photographs of the knives? Did you have any case that you opened the box and the knife was rusted, or was there any mishaps? Can you tell me something about that?
Oh, I got plenty of stories. I've never seen a rusted knife. Although sometimes I've photographed used knives for dealers, and I've had to spend quite a bit of time with some Simichrome and a little Neverdull, which is a wadding polish to bring it up to snuff. I got a wonderful Scandinavian knife from a maker at the New York Custom Knife Show just about a year or so ago, and it was a sharp little booger. It was really, really sweet, and I photographed the knife in the sheath. And then in my haste to put it away, that I just stuck it right in that sheath and just bang, the tip, half an inch of the tip, a centimeter, came popping right out of the side of the sheath. I was like, and it was a beautiful, really plain sheath, so there was no hiding this scar whatsoever. There it was, and I just rolled my eyes and said, well, I just purchased this knife and sheath. And so, as soon as I could, I instead of Trevor walking the knife to his table and delivering it, I walked it over, and with my head hung low, I said, I got good news and I got bad news, and yet I have even better news. I said, the good news is I took a great photograph of your knife and sheath, and the bad news is I've stuck the knife right through the sheath, and it's through. And but the good news again is you just sold that knife.
Did you ask for discounts since the knife was used now?
But I'll tell you what, the maker, just like so many of your makers, he said, no, these things happen. I'm going to sell that knife on my table. I'm going to go back and make another sheath. And you know what happened? I said, I tell you what, the knife image is for free. And he says, that would work for me. Let's go. And that's how it worked. So,
right. So now we all know what to do. We all need one sheath at our table that has a big cut in it. When Trevor brings that knife back, we just quickly do the switcheroony and say, "Oh, Trevor, come on, those photos have to be free because I've got a hole in this sheath."
Nailed it.
I think after about 14 or 15 of those, you might get suspicious.
That's good. Yeah, I've cut myself often. You try not to. Those chamois, sometimes they come in handy to soak up blood as well as soak up grease and oils. And I'll tell your viewers that every once in a while, the guys that make traditional knives, there's some of those guys, they put five, even six of those blades all in one with big stiff back springs. And it's the most dangerous knife in the world to open. I got them open. You got to watch their habit, and they're ready to spring, and they're ready to bite you like a lobster. So there's some danger involved in knife photography, as well as just good visuals.
Yeah, must be also satisfying you to. So I was saying, also must be satisfying too, because Jim, you were collecting knives before, right?
I owned probably 60. I still own 60 custom knives. I bought one earlier this year from a website in America. I love custom knives just as your viewers do or your listeners do. I support the makers. It's terrific. I've probably had 150 custom knives come and go in my lifetime. I hold about 50 now. They're wonderful objects. The sense of pride I have in owning them, and it's terrific. So yeah, I'm not just doing a service and making money through the community. I give back in many ways, as I can.
Right. Now, people have probably already rewound to check, but you mentioned a couple of products there that you use, Jim, to do a quick once-over of your knives. What were those products that you just said, sorry?
Well, one's like a little paste that comes out of a tube. It's called Simichrome. It's a polish. You probably have a similar item here in Australia. And the other is a product. It's like it's a thick cotton wadding with some type of chemical in it. It's like an oil, but it takes tarnish off very easily and cleans. It has a little minor bit of abrasive because it's cotton, and you can take off rust and stuff. And I'm constantly, you've all seen it. Your makers may not know this. The one thing when I'm at a show that I have to clean all the time is when we talk, we have a little bit of spittle that comes out, and it finds itself on the blade, and so you have all these little dots and spots on a polished blade. And I'm aware of that. It happens. It's natural. When we're excited, we're talking like this, and we're spitting all over the place. So I've got to clean that stuff up. So when a maker sends me a piece of work, I've got to clean it, make sure it looks good, make sure it looks pristine, and the last thing I have to do is not eat a bag of potato chips before I lay it on the table, so that my fingerprints aren't all over the place.
I think we all have those moments at shows where we cringe when, Dad brings his two little kids along and they're sucking on lollipops, and then they go to reach over to the knives, and Dad's not paying any attention to it, and that's the automatic thing is you just sort of start leaning over to get the cloth out, see if you can save it before things go wrong. I had one person at my table this show. And his little boy decided he was going to climb under my table, and I was just holding on to the tablecloth on my side of the table in case when he decided he'd come out that he was going to pull it. And I sort of was like, I was looking at the dad really wide-eyed, sort of going, your son's just gone under the table. And he was good at it. The dad was great, and the son did come out eventually and didn't tear my tablecloth off. But, yeah, I think we all have those knife show moments where, the lump in the throat comes up and you're like, oh, dear, something's going to go wrong here.
Yeah, absolutely. But speaking about buying things at a show, Kev, did anyone else buy anything at the show? I thought it might be interesting to discuss if you guys did, because, well, I did. I dropped some cash on on one of those lovely stilettos made by Wayne from Wade Knives, Wayne Barrett, and honestly, I really couldn't resist on account of he made stiletto barrel knives, and everybody knows how I feel about barrel knives. So I dropped my coin on a beautiful stiletto barrel knife with a guard, which Jim Cooper actually photographed. So you're going to see a photograph of that along with Andrew Smith's version of the same thing that he bought. So we picked the two best up off the table early on there. So they were my purchases. Keith, you've got one?
Yeah, thanks, Corin. Whenever I go to a knife show, whether it's here in Australia or overseas, my wife Robin says to me, make sure you come home with less than you left with. And that doesn't have to be knives. That could be like handle material. I know that, I probably overdid the handle material a little bit much. I gave it a bit of a nudge this past weekend. But, you're walking around the show, when you have that opportunity and you go, ooh, look at that. I got to have that. I guess, that's a knife maker's lament because, as Corin's just pointed out, not only do we make knives, but we love knives, and we see something and we just go, yeah, I got to have that. So usually I buy a folding knife every year or every show that I go to, but this year I didn't. I was pretty close, but I kept hearing my wife's voice in the background going, no. But anyway, so it's all good on that front, right?
Pete, that wasn't in the background. Robin rang me up and said, "Can you put me on speakerphone for a second?" So.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for that, mate. That's really encouraging. What's your name again? Chris. No, Kev. Kev. That's right. Yeah, I got you, mate. I got you. But I think we all do that, right?
Oh yeah, like I was meant to be pretty good, like you are every knife show. I was meant to be pretty good. I told myself the same thing. I don't need a lot of stuff this time, so I'm going to be pretty frugal with my spending. And I think I just went to the gents' room and came back, and on the floor behind my table, there were like bundles of timber with my name on it, and I'm like, what the? Oh shit, that's right. I lined up to buy, $200 or $300 worth of timber off one of the guys before the show even started. So I had that, and then I started using the Takafu Special Steels products before this show. So I had some of their stuff there, which I liked using. So I went to buy like 2 bars and came back with about $1,000 worth of steel. I bought 5 hammers off Matt Newburn. What else? Too much. I should be quiet in case my wife's listening to this. Oh, and at the end of the day, Peter Chill, of course, he was opposite me. Peter Chill's probably the key seller of Ringigi in Australia, and probably opening up that market in the US. He doesn't like to take timber home, so Peter came over and gave me the call to come to his table and put a big bag of timber together for a price I couldn't say no to. I think I came home with about $20 in my pocket, but I've got a lot of stuff to make knives.
Yeah, look, Peter Chill from, he's such a great guy, and Yeah, he knows how to move some material. That's for sure.
Yeah, we should actually give a shout out to Peter's daughter as well, because she's been at the last few shows helping him out, and it's probably not the most exciting place for a young girl to be with a bunch of yeah, and I'm going to generalise this, but bearded hooligans walking around wanting to buy knife handle material. Okay, I'm just describing myself there. So the bearded hooligan coming over and wanting to buy knife material. So she's been to the last few shows that I've seen Peter at as well, and helping Dad out, which is a good thing. So what was your shopping list, Matt? Did you buy anything special?
I'm sure my wife is not going to listen to this. I spend a lot of money. I set my table up. I did not even took any of the knives out. Peter Chill was across me, and I went to his table. I didn't go to blocks because a lot of the makers who are starting, they're buying 1 or 2 blocks. But I spotted he had those massive timbers. Like it's like 30 centimeter wide, maybe 40 centimeter long. And I grabbed 4 of them. Then I bought some steel, and I'm thinking I got all of these steel. I need to be able to grind them with something. I bought belts, and let's say I spent 1/3 or 1/4 of the amount I made at the show. Yeah.
I actually think that's pretty standard, and I reckon that's pretty conservative. I reckon I actually this show I probably went closer to 50% of what I earned. I actually spent. And in the good side of that, I got a couple of my knives photographed by Jim as well, which I'm really excited to see those when they come through. I made a set of chef knives out of the Takafu Vitoku 2 with some pretty special material on them. I alluded to this through my Instagram and possibly the last podcast that I had a special lot of knives to make, and would probably be the first maker in the world to use the material. And now's probably where I'm going to stop the conversation and let you all wait for the next episode.
So all the knives I was talking about last episode, I was saying I was making a wood knife. Yes, I finished the blade, couldn't finish the handle. I was meant to bring a feather integral. I couldn't finish it. So, yeah, I got like a lot of half-finished projects waiting for me now.
And how about those award knives at the show, guys?
Oh yeah, look, I actually was like pretty thrilled because I got asked to be on the judging panel this year, and I got to say that hats off to anyone ever, anywhere ever that has to be a part of a group of people that judges prize knives. Especially, like you're saying, with the caliber of knives that were presented in each and every one of those classes this year, was a tough job. The winners of those prize categories, which again were photographed by Jim, and we'll get those photos up on various platforms so you can see them. I was blown away, man. Like we have this thing where with the judges, we sort of look at all the knives, and then we do a pretty simple thing. We count down 3, 2, 1, and we point the finger at the knife that we think is the category winner, and then we discuss it. I wish I'd had like 4 arms, because I would have been pointing at multiple knives across the board. They were so tightly done. Did you guys find that same thing?
Speaking for myself, yes, and Keith and Jim were both judging this year. Keith?
Yeah, look, I just have to echo, what you've been saying there, mate. And, the thing is that, and I've done it, I think, twice before, I think. And the bar gets raised every single year, which is great to see. And, you've got to look at everything in perspective. And, during the process, if you recall, Kev and Corin and Jim, that it was just like, oh, wait a minute, we're at even score here, so discount those ones that didn't make it, and then discuss it, the whys and the wherefores as to why you like that and why you don't like the other one, and at the end of the day, it's really like a coin toss. So just fantastic, and right across the board throughout all of those categories, the workmanship is just absolutely fantastic. And I've been to Blade Show for the last 10 years, and seen a lot of competitions, both Journeyman Smith, Master Smith, Best in Show, all of that sort of stuff. And I've got to say, and Jim will probably concur with this, that the knife makers here in Australia are world class. That's for sure.
I'm with Keith. That was a great privilege. As many knives as I've handled in shows that I've been to, I've never been asked to have the opportunity to judge, and it was a privilege sitting in there. And it was really reassuring for many of us. For a lot of the choices, we'd all look and kind of handle. Nobody discuss anything. We just privately look over things and then say 1, 2, 3, go. And what do we have? 7 people there that were judging, and to have 5 hands pointing at the same knife at once was like, okay, there we are. We all nailed it on that one, and move right along. So we tried to be expeditious, but very fair about it. It was wonderful, Karin.
Yeah, and then you judge some categories where everybody's pointing at a different knife, and they're all fantastic. Into the discussion. There we go. So
There were a couple of categories where we shortlisted and then shortlisted again before we came to the final thing. So I thought it was pretty cool. It was pretty exciting actually, being on that platform doing that sort of stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And a big shout out to some of the winners, particularly though Sean McIntyre for a clean sweep of about 4 categories. Which was just tremendous. The quality of workmanship, the design and execution was just outstanding. So a big shout out to Sean McIntyre, being one of 2 ABS Master Smiths in Australia. I guess it's a testament to what he's achieved in his career and self-explanatory. But it's one thing to have some letters after your name. It's another thing to have to be able to back it up with good quality workmanship, and he surely did.
Yeah, and in one of the categories in particular, though, we should point out that it definitely wasn't a clean sweep for votes on a particular knife. There were some real high caliber Aussie makers that are sort of starting to nip at his heels, which isn't hard because he's pretty short. But we're nipping at his heels, and I had to get that one in. Yeah. I'll pay for it later. I know. Yeah, no, but there was nothing got a clean sweep, which was awesome. There was not one knife out of that. I'd probably say possibly with the exception of Best in Show, the Bowie that Sean won for that particular category. I think when we all went back and looked at the knives across the tables, that one particularly stood out. It was unbelievable. It was a bit of a favourite. So what else have we got, guys? Anything general sort of chit chat regarding Aussie knife making?
Look, I think we should do a quick shout out for the next show in the circuit, which would be, and I'm not sure if it's running this year, so we'll need to check the website, but that would be the South Coast Knife Show. And following that would be, which would be the first weekend in October. And then the second one after that, which is the big one in the calendar, the next big one in the calendar, is the Adelaide Knife Show. So we'll give a quick shout out for those 2. And Adelaide Knife Show is the first weekend in November. If you love knife making, you love knives, come along down there in Adelaide. It's a fantastic show. There's no question about it.
And in the previous episode of the podcast that we were recording, I was actually giving Adelaide Show a pretty big boost and saying how happy I was I'm going to get back there this year. And I was thoroughly gutted when I refreshed my Facebook page later that day and there was the news up that show is sold out. There's no tables available at that show, which for Peter Bald and anyone else that's involved in organising that show, that's absolutely awesome. Like selling out this far in advance is kind of crazy. So, Corin, I'll talk to you later about maybe wearing a Gamaco shirt and just coming over to visit.
Oh, mate, you'd be most welcome. We should have a chat for sure.
Yeah.
Adelaide Knife Show is run at the Arca Hotel, and the reason that Gamaco has the truck set up the way we do at the moment is because of the Arca Hotel. As anybody who knows how much of a I'm going to say it, pain in the ass that show is for Gamaco, getting our gear up that little elevator, through the bar, through the restaurant, up and down the elevators to the accommodation. It really is a nightmare. So if you are coming to that show, do come and check out our brand new truck. And it's not our new truck, it's our old truck that we bring every year that's been redecked out, refitted, and made a lot more workable. Do come and check us out in the car park.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, also, like you say, the show down the South Coast. Now, that's something that we need to have I think we need to give those guys a quick boost too, because Ian and Sarah Hamilton from Mother Mountain Forge decided they were going to start a little knife show for the community down at the South Coast of New South Wales. And it's been running for a few years, and it's always been something that's been held at Tilba or Tilba, one of the two areas. And they're really generous in the fact that if you go there as a knife maker, you pay next to nothing for a table, and it's just a really cool little escape down the coast, and quite often just a social thing. Normally, we don't get a massive amount of makers down there, but it's just great fun to get down there and be a part of something. You're taking something great to a smaller community. Now, they've changed the format a little bit last year, I believe. It might have been last year. I didn't get there, unfortunately, but they're trying to get off the ground a little bit more of a festival, not only knife making, but arts and crafts and artisan wares down that way. And I believe they're looking at doing it at Cabargo, which is where another reasonable Aussie maker, Ian Stewart, another excellent Aussie maker, Ian Stewart, lives down that way. So if anyone's listening to this and, have a look at the South Coast Knife Show, if you can spare the time to go down the coast for a weekend, it's on at a great time of year for the weather down there normally. Step up and head down, get some accommodation down there, and come along and have a look at it, and give Ian and Sarah, a bit of support in that community down there. I think it'd be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, Kev. It is worth noting it's a one-day show, so it's held on the long weekend in New South Wales. So you can have a couple of days down on the South Coast to explore and see some sights down there. Great food, great arts and crafts, and just great little communities down there. And to be honest, the highlight of the trip when we send staff down to attend the show is they get to camp out on site at Ian and Sarah's place and have a great time there as well. Because if you know Ian and Sarah, just lovely people. So, and Ian runs courses as well. So if you could book in and run a course, he's sure got an arm. He can swing a hammer like no one I've watched. So, good people and a good little show.
Yeah, good stuff. Anyone else got anything?
Let's talk about the social side of the knife show, Kev. The live video we did. That broke.
Do we really want to talk about it?
Where do we find this live video, guys?
I don't know. I don't know. It's nowhere. It's gone. Don't look. Don't Google. As you're saying, like a good part of the knife show thing is getting there and going out and just getting amongst it with your friends. Now, sometimes that can involve alcohol, and I know we all drink responsibly, but sometimes the alcohol can lead to funny encounters and funny events. And Mert and I, we've already been caught on one occasion doing Instagram live feeds late, drunk in a motel room at a knife show, and
I'm going to interrupt you right now. I know where you both live.
And that's why you're avoiding us. Good idea.
Absolutely.
So no, we enjoyed some late night drinks with the guys down in the hotel there, and we all had a good amount of fun. And then Mert and I decided, we ended up retiring up to the room, and there was a little bit of conversation going on and some antics, and I didn't realise for the first bit that Mert even had his phone on him. So, yeah. There were no drunken cuddles that I'm aware of.
The next morning, we're both hangover, and people come to your table in the morning. Oh man, I watched the live video. Then you're like, oh, okay.
Live video. Look at Mert, because Mert and I don't know if there's something going on here with the organisers of these shows, or influence from me, but Mert and I have had a tendency to be sat next to each other at knife shows quite a lot lately.
we actually like to keep the troublemakers together so we can keep an eye on you guys, right?
Hey, and when you say that, Keith, guess who was over my shoulder?
Yeah, that's so I can keep an eye on you, right?
Yeah, right.
Or you can keep your eye on me. I don't know how.
We're like I think there's a certain group of knife makers that are like that table at the wedding that gets put right the way back from the bride and groom.
That's us.
Yeah, I think we fill that table well.
Well, guys.
All right.
Keith and Jim, is there anything else you'd like to put out there for Australian knife makers, and anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I would just like to say, look, I've been involved in this industry for over 30 years, and it's been a great journey, and the Knife Art Association has really stepped up the game a hell of a lot. With the shows that we're running, and also the symposiums that we run. And I know that Corin and I have been quite surprised at the number of people who have been or show an interest, in the knife making community, and actually having a go at making some knives on their own. The industry is growing at a phenomenal rate, and I just encourage anyone who really wants to have a go just to ask another knife maker, attend these events, ask the questions, attend the symposium, because really, and this is not just an Australian thing, it's a worldwide thing. The knife making community is really, really good. And so if you want to have a go, that's where you go.
This is Coop again. I just want to close and say the beauty of the Australian landscape is only exceeded by the hospitality and generosity that I've met through the makers. I've dealt with makers through every venue, and if I would rank makers that I've dealt with through the years, the lowest rank would be a 7 out of 10, because knife makers in general are great, but I would have to say the Australian makers are in the 9-point series. Every one of them, they're just superb. What a privilege being here, working with you guys, partying with you guys, enjoying with you guys, and getting a chance to work with the knives and knife makers that you guys have. I can't wait to produce those images, and I really can't wait till I come back again next year. And as a small adjunct, there was a large hole in my pocket burning for one of the knife makers that were here, Mr. Barrett's work as well. But the good news is I had my wife and son here. The bad news is I had my wife and son here. Next year, I'm coming with a pocket full of cash. Here you go, Corin.
Well, guys.
Yeah. Or you could just slip $50 to one of us, Jim, and we'll take your wife and son out to lunch for you on that day. And then you've got about an hour to shop for yourself.
Yeah, let's collaborate. Thank you.
So we're like I said, well, I think in general we're as the Knife Art Association in particular, as well as the knife making community, I think we're all pretty humbled to have you out here, mate. I really do. Yeah. We did have I should say I know there's going to be a lot of people at the moment going, well, hang on, what the hell about Mike Cthulhu, we'll broach Mike's guest appearance and stuff on our next episode, I think.
Yeah, what a great idea.
So,
maybe we'll get him calling in. That'd be a good thing if we can organise it. Sure we can.
yeah, and there's a lot of social media footage out and about from his adventures. If you want to look at it in the meantime, check out what was happening down at Everleigh Works. Jump onto the Knife Show Facebook page. You'll see links to all the stuff that was going on. They did a big crazy sword type adventure at Everleigh, and also Mike was, going around the show having a great old time mingling with everyone. So we'll have a bit more of a talk about Mike on the next episode. So don't feel like we've just dissed him. We'll cover that on the next one around.
And fancy him meeting his long lost brother out here, Sausage Man.
Yeah, you've got to go and look at Sausage Man Forge on Instagram and check out the photos. I think they were separated at birth.
So a big thanks to Jim Cooper for coming out to Australia. A big thanks to the Knife Art Association for making it possible. And we really appreciate what you've done, Jim. We appreciate that special filter you use on our knives to make them look better. And it's just one of those things that if we all make great things and keep them to ourselves, then the rest of the world will never know. So having those images out there being circulated is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I'm not saying we all make great things, but, we do our best, that's for sure. And yeah, it's a happy place. So really, really happy to have you here. Thanks for being such a good sport when I made you climb up through rocks and boulders, scrape your knees, climb up waterfalls. It's always.
I pulled up okay, and I can tell you, this time of the year, it's the weather's starting to warm up a little bit. But I tell you what, mate, that water is bloody cold.
I reckon so. Yeah.
All right, so
very good.
So all good, guys, and that's. Is there any other subjects you guys want to cover? Have we got anything in from our listeners?
No, just one quick thing is just because of the Sydney Knife Show prep, I was quite on the Instagram side of things, but starting from this week, I'll be posting more about the pictures of I took, and also please send me the pictures of you and your work from the show so I can share on our Instagram page.
Excellent.
And do you want them to send them to you, Mert, directly, or do you want them to send them to
not to me. Please send it to Knifemaking Downunder podcast Instagram page. Not to me, please. Just on the podcast page, or even Facebook page. We can reshare them on a Facebook or on Instagram.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
All right,
guys. Thanks everyone. That was a bloody. I reckon that was a ripper of a weekend, and I'm really stoked with this podcast. Again, Jim, thanks to you and your family. Keith, thanks to everything you do behind the scenes in the Knife Art Association, mate. We all appreciate that. Thanks for being our first local guest on the show too. I think that's a pretty monumental thing. And we'll all sign out and get on with the rest of the evening and see you guys in a week or so.
See you, Kev. See you, Mert.
Very good.
See you guys.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, guys.